The man's keeping me down.
Setting up your feed live. I think it's your meeting, and we are live on Facebook. There we are, live on Facebook. Once again, Tommy McKay here with 3D Politics. I've got two Davids with me, David Oldham and David Van. You can always catch those guys. David Oldham there at constitutionalgrounds.com and David Van, the master at soonerpolitics.org. You can always find me right here at Tommy McKay on Facebook and Twitter, and McKay at 3dpoliticslive.com. We have a ton of stuff to get to, and we're going to get to it quickly. Everybody's talking about the meltdown of Western civilization and the riots, but not us. We're not going to start with that. We're going to start with the Oklahoma security. Oh, I'm going to talk about the potential for a special session in Oklahoma legislature. Knowing later we're going to talk about all these riots and stuff, but we got to get the little stuff out first. And so there might be a special session in Oklahoma legislature. And also there are, as the Oklahoma Employment Security Commission says, they're finally sending out the federal money today.
Yay.
Also, churches, it's like a chicken versus a state. Church versus state from constitutionalgrounds.com, a story out there where they're going to discuss what they can and can't do. So before we start everything, anybody got any updates? Time is moving quickly these days.
Yes, Tom.
Yeah.
I've got an official announcement. I want you all to rest assured that all of my opinions tonight, all of my analysis is data-driven, in keeping with the governor's example.
Good idea.
And based in science.
Yes.
Well,
Good.
just to let everybody know, I will be more remote than usual next week, heading off to the East Coast again to do a speaking engagement in Connecticut, and also looking to be meeting up with patriots out there in Connecticut and New Jersey all next week.
Good.
So I will probably be remoting in for next Monday evening.
Excellent. So yeah, all the stuff is going on, and before we get to, and also I've got big giant news concerning GT Bynum and my position concerning the mayor of Tulsa, Oklahoma. After his meeting today, I was able to watch the entire meeting through a Facebook feed. I shared it to the 3D Politics page.
Yeah.
And so I just want to talk a little bit about GT Bynum and my attitude about him. And we'll get to that later. But first, tell us about the special session. And why
has your opinion changed?
I think he's taller. I think he's taller. To me, the stature is changed.
Well, I've lost it, guys.
I just got it. So anyway, tell us about the so special session. I think this has to do with the marijuana laws. Is that correct?
It does, and I'm going to pull this up here right now. We'll get us a little bit of the article. This is actually coming from Ron Durbin. He's now a blogger for Sooner Politics. He is the leading marijuana policy attorney, and on Friday he was down there at the Capitol, met up with Representative Fettgatter, as many of you know, is really kind of spearheaded the framework that the legislature feels is so important, and that Oldham insisted there be about. That was supposed to be a joke, Oldham.
I get you.
Yes. So
I don't get it.
anyway, but on the way back, Durbin posted up in his podcast. He said, guys, there's going to be a meeting Monday. Governor Stitt is going to be getting with the legislative leaders and just look at how can we fix the things that won't wait until next February? Because if we don't fix some things, we already screwed it up last session a year ago, and the agency said, well, you know, we're just not going to enforce that until next year's legislature finishes because you lawmakers have told us you made a mistake. But it's still law. And then, you know, they thought they had it fixed, and then they rolled it all into an omnibus, and then Stitt vetoed it. So anyway, there could be a special session. Now, the big argument Ron makes here, let's get it out of the way. Everybody says, oh, this is going to cost too much money, You know, here's the thing. We pull in about $8 million now a month on marijuana. Actually, it's more like 12 million when you consider everything.
Is it really?
Yeah, well, when you figure all of the revenues, that includes the licenses, and there's several of them. You know, you got to get a $500 license from the OBNDD, you know, Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, in order to be a farmer. You know,
To practice your rights.
yes.
To exercise your rights.
So
right.
if they shut them all down, or shut down 20% of them, we're going to lose more money than what the special session would cost us just in 1 month. So Ron wanted to be sure to put that out, but you know, Ron actually he's in the hospital today. I think he's going through a heart procedure. Yeah. And
well, I think this is to correct what he had happen the other day, right?
Well, they were wanting to put another stint in, but then they said last night that he's not healthy yet enough for what he would really like.
Got HIPAA laws, boys. Got HIPAA laws.
Wow.
Yeah, so anyway, I'm going to get with Fetgatter tonight or tomorrow and see, you know, if that actually happened. It could be the governor gets a little nervous and canceled some meetings so that he could consider calling out the National Guard, you know, to be cool like Minnesota. I don't know.
Well, in the government's or in the governor's defense, cities have called for the calling out of the National Guard in, you know, out of concern with all the protests. We'll get to that more later, but
right.
So it's understandable that he might be not able to do all.
I'm going to do a shameless plug here, and that is that Ron Durbin took our lead here, 3D Politics, and started a podcast, and he's got his own right here in the health science section of Sooner Politics. You can keep up with the latest news on that if that's important to you. I do that because none of the other media is doing it, and I'm just, you know, folks, sometimes citizen media, citizen journalism is the only thing you got.
We're going to find out later with some local broadcast footage that sometimes citizen media is all you've got.
Yes.
Oh, is it? Is it ever?
And
yes.
I was scrubbed by local media here recently in True. But I had a question before we move on from this marijuana story. Isn't part of the pressure, and I guess this is what you were alluding to, I mean, if it was something that could wait, it might be able to wait, but with this kind of revenue, isn't that leaving loose ends for financial stuff?
Well, let's understand what the problem is that the rules and laws that have not been fixed are going to put people out of business who are currently lawfully under the illegal laws that we have. They are lawfully in business, and because of the change, it's going to throw them out with all their all their investment, everything else, just trash the whole thing.
And Oldham, you're going to love this part, okay? It's not going nearly far enough, but there's a Supreme Court case, maybe it's the appellate court, in which a law was struck down in Tennessee that was a protectionist law for their own wineries. And they said to be a winery in Tennessee, you have to have 2 years or 5 years residency.
Right.
And the federal courts have said that's a violation of interstate commerce.
Correct.
And it's a protectionist thing. Well, what happened is, when we first started medical marijuana, almost 2 years ago, it's coming up, you know, it's 22 months right now. And they basically, you just had to show that you are a resident, and you had to show who you are, and you could get a license, you know. And I mean, there was this felony thing that you had to be clean of felonies for a certain amount of time. And that was in the terms that the state question writer, Chip Hall, wrote that. Well, anyway, the legislature...
Don't get me started on Chip.
Yeah, the legislature, I'm trying not to. The legislature then changed it to, no, you have to be a resident for 2 years. Well, we've got people who they've been in business for a year, and their license is up for renewal. And they were legal last year, but now they're no longer a legal resident for the time needed, so they'll have to shut down. And what I think really got us gets attention, and I'm going to take credit for this, as I said, this is not a time when the government needs to be killing the economy even further. These are family farms. These are family shops. These are, 97% of them, I would say, are family-run businesses where the money's really coming from one family.
Mm-hmm.
And you're putting them out of business because the legislature screwed up.
Well,
and the governor screwed up.
It's the people doing their normal lives, and the legislature gets together and has a big meeting and signs pieces of paper that just by the stroke of a pen makes them criminal.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the problem with the whole thing. Is nobody is, remember, rightful liberty is unobstructed action according to our will, not the will of the government, but our will, so long as we're not violating the rights of others. And that's the key thing. Government doesn't have the right to obstruct in any way, shape, or form. That's the drawing line, the dividing line. And I think this just highlights the perversity of of allowing that which is inherently a right of ours.
Sure.
So,
let's move on, if you guys are ready, to the Oklahoma Employment Security Commission. Says they're finally going to send out the federal money today. Don't we all just love it when they send out?
Yes. Now, I had an article a week ago on this about the screw-ups there, and they, I guess, named an interim commissioner on Wednesday.
Okay.
And that commissioner basically said, rather than us doing all of the police work to hunt down any fraud in the initial application, we're going to automate a bunch of this stuff, knowing full well that it's going to be caught on the back end by a more of a policing action, looking for fraud and run that down, in which case you're going to have to go after people criminally for fraud, defrauding the state and federal government, and actually receiving the money. They were wanting to catch it at the front end where you just reject it, but you don't prosecute criminally.
Well, and you're really not going to be able to catch it at the front end, partly because there's so many claims. But the other thing is, and David, you and I should expect to see these things. I mean, I have people who fraudulently claim to be an employee all the time. I'm getting calls, from creditors. I'm getting calls from other businesses wanting a reference. They've never been an employee of mine.
Sure.
And stuff like that. So I fully expect that at some point I may get a summons from the from the what's it called, the unemployment insurance department, this agency, and be faced with, hey, you owe money, you had an employee you didn't tell us about. It's like, I don't have employees like that, so no. But
so Tom, what's really created this problem is the kind of paperwork volume they were moving for the last 8-10 years. They're now moving 10 times that amount,
right?
And they just don't have the staff for it to do it in the way they had been, where they've been nitpicking, busy work, give me something to do. Because when you got that low of unemployment, it's like, to keep your job, you got to find work to do.
Well, again, I have a problem with them using unemployment funds for a prohibition of work. It's not unemployment whatsoever. Nobody's unemployed. They were forced by government to stop working. That's a prohibition of activity. It's not unemployment. And now they're going to be nice to us by using our money to pay us back.
Yeah.
Well, and that's I'm 100% with you on that. I'm glad you mentioned it because I was gonna, but but that's very much the problem. It is, although many have been laid off because of the prohibitions, not necessarily the prohibition to work, but the inability of some government or some businesses to maintain because of others being prohibited to work. And so the downstream effects have added up to unemployment. And yes, there is a fund, but they're going to replenish that fund through taxation and other things, and it's not going to be merely just through the the replenishment by ordinary unemployment insurance deduction.
If you're just now tuning in, you're listening to 3D Politics with me, Tommy McKay, your fine host. I've got David Van and David Oldham with me. We're getting ready to jump right into all of the riot news, all the exciting stuff. Van has got basically some of the best footage that has been enhanced from Minnesota when troops fired on people standing politely on their own front porch. And
they were the right color too.
How about that? Isn't that amazing? And we're also going to talk about GT Bynum and all of the news here locally. But you want to go with that Minnesota story, David? You ready to do that, or you want to?
I do. I'm actually doing a little bit of technical stuff here. I just had my second screen go out, and so now I'm having to move you guys over.
Oh,
where I got my laptop right underneath the camera there. See, so
tele du toi du toi. Your friend.
We're good. Yeah, we are good. So anyway,
I saw this stuff. It looked like something out of a Matrix movie where they're walking down the street, and then suddenly the machine turns and targets the humans and begins to fire on them. It was fairly outstanding footage.
Yes, and I want to say where I got this from. It actually was on Facebook. This was not Facebook, Twitter. Tanya Curson. Now she lives just off of Lake Street, and she's it's just maybe 4 blocks from that precinct 5. If you were watching Friday night and Saturday night, what was going on here with all the cops after they burned down one precinct, my old precinct when I lived over there, Minnehaha, in south of Lake Street. But anyway, so yeah, let's just watch what she's seeing.
And this is in Minneapolis, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and here we go. Now I lightened up the color. Hers was dark to begin with, and then I put a couple of still shots because she filmed in portrait mode, and so I did kind of the far left, far right as static picture. And let's go ahead and watch and listen as she's describing what she sees. Let's go back here to the beginning.
All right.
Picture.
They just keep coming.
Oh, go inside! Get inside! Get inside! Get inside! Get your house down! Let's go! Light him up!
Light them up.
Go inside now! Get in the house!
Seems reasonable.
Get in!
I mean,
Are you okay?
Right on the fucking crotch.
Are you okay? You got hit?
I'm good. They're bugs for that, dude. What?
Okay.
Okay, so that's what she experienced. Now, if you see that Hummer there,
we need you to.
Piles of people.
yeah, let's go ahead and take that screen down.
Yeah, there you go.
So you see the Hummer there, it's unmarked. It's probably something from the National Guard or, I'm sure we don't know.
No.
Yeah, it said and actually, guys, I'm going to be bringing the screen back to show you the actual frequently asked questions came from the Department of Public Safety, where they spell out the rules, and these people on the front porch were actually in full compliance with the curfew as the governor spelled it out. And so
the governor or mayor?
Governor.
So it's a statewide curfew?
No, the governor issued a state curfew for people in the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and then he said other cities are authorized to establish their own curfews. So he listed this curfew for these domains.
And that's probably so that he could activate the National Guard if necessary against breakers.
Okay. So Anyway, I want to show you guys this, and I'm going to share screen, and this will be the document that I put underneath here. Okay, you guys can see this. It had a little bit heading. Now, here we go. Underneath the line, here's a Google cache of the DPS document that's since then been updated. Okay, so I wanted you guys to see the original document as it applied. Here's the frequently asked questions from the Department of Public Safety. Where does a curfew apply? City of Minneapolis, City of St. Paul. What does a curfew mean? This is their definition. All persons must not travel on any public street or in any public area. Private property is not included. Okay? Then it talks about the exemptions. People going to work, you know, emergency responders, media. I have a problem with that because I don't want the government deciding who is and who isn't media. We all are. Thank you.
Correct.
Okay. Now, watch this. We're going to go down to the key things. How long will it last? Now, it says right here, if you can see my cursor, he says, can I go to a family friend's home? Okay, can I be outside my house or my property during this time? Yes. Yes. Can I have a backyard fire? If it's in your backyard, you can have a fire. Okay. And, you know, and so those are the key things I wanted you guys to see. Now I'm going to go ahead and close out of this here so we can talk more. But there you see reproduction of the actual document. I actually copied and pasted. I did not edit this at all. This is their text. So you can see these people on the front porch were fully within the requirements. And yet they got shot at. And by the way, these were paint cartridges. You saw the bright green? That's what it was.
At least some of them, some of them sounded like they might be rubber bullets or something like that, because I didn't hear an air, you know, a blast of air like you hear with a paint cartridge, a paint gun. It sounded like a percussion of some sort of a ignited round.
But there could be an explosive ignited paint cartridge. I don't know what the government does or doesn't have.
That could be. That could be. The point is, they were less than lethal. Obviously, nobody was hurt in that particular instance. But there could be, I mean, if these guys are going along and doing that kind of behavior, people actually have the right to shoot back.
I was what about Rambo sitting on his porch and he gets triggered when you guys come by?
Well, there's that, but here's the problem. Here's the problem I have. Curfews as applied are meant to make it so that a very few police officers can control a very large population. Okay? And they do that by flipping the tables and saying, you're a criminal if you are out, and we're dealing with you as a criminal just for being out.
Yeah.
And the problem, and that frankly is exactly how they have dealt with COVID, how they are trying to deal with vaccines, how they've dealt with drugs, gun possession, all of that. That all follows the exact same model. Right. That's why COVID was not a shock to me that they went that direction, because they've been doing the other for 70 years.
Right.
And so what we need to start pushing, and we're going to talk when you get to GT Bynum. I mean, it should have been what everybody brought up when they were talking with Bynum. Yeah, nobody did, partly because they're involved in it, you know, like Regina Goodwin and stuff like that. They're involved in maintaining that this is somehow lawful. But I beg anybody to answer to me, where in the Constitution do you get the authority to declare a curfew?
Yeah.
Anywhere. I mean, please show me. Because we are not talking an insurrection. The argument was that we would be talking an insurrection, but what authority does the governor have in an insurrection? Does he have curfew authority? Does he have, or does he just have control of the militia or the militia, the National Guard. And it would vary by state, but the question is, what do they have? Because just declaring people, saying no, you can't be out, violates the regulation versus prohibition principle that I've been talking about.
Okay, now remember what Frank Urbanik pointed out, and I think you had a phone call talk with him about it after you discovered that when the governor was trying to declare certain emergency powers on the COVID-19 thing, he actually was rather deceitful in declaring a state of riot exists.
Correct.
Which gives the governor in Oklahoma certain powers, according to the statute. Okay?
Correct.
And Frank called him on it, and the governor quickly changed his tune, did it the right way, which triggered the legislature has to meet within 48 hours and has to authorize it. The governor can't do it without the legislature approving it.
Right.
These are the safeguards in Oklahoma. So, but here's the point I want to get at. You're always taking a risk when you amp things up. Setting aside, Oldham, for a minute, your argument about whether those constitutional powers exist, just from a pragmatic standpoint of good government, when you start bringing in troops who don't have the cohesion, don't have the training, I mean, you're bringing in, like my nephew's platoon, lieutenant, spent, I think, 2 or 3 tours in the Middle East. Well, this might be how you handle things in Fallujah. But this isn't necessarily how you handle things in Minneapolis, And
some people would argue that.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing: at a state of war, things just naturally, not that they should, but they naturally get a little sloppy.
Right.
And we saw sloppiness here.
Well, my point is that there's a lot of people who think Minneapolis is in a state of war. So, I mean, not just now, but I mean, just in general.
David, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? This is the mantra of the leftist big statist government.
Exactly.
So my point is, these soldiers were not listening to the governor. The governor said these citizens were fully in compliance, and that wasn't good enough for these thugs. I'm going to call them thugs. When you go beyond, you're a thug.
Yep.
So... Now they might have been good guys on the next block, but on this block we saw they were thugs.
Well, and remember, you only break one law to be a lawbreaker. So, I mean, it only takes that. So let's understand that we can support the police, and I know, speaking for myself, I'm desperate to support the police, but I will only support them to the extent that they support the Constitution.
Just tuning in, you're watching 3D Politics live right here on Facebook. I've got David Van from SoonerPolitics.org and David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com. I am Tommy McKay, your fine host right here at Tommy McKay on Facebook and Twitter. I want to move on to the Mill City media. One of the things that is the best footage you could get on the night it all went down, the melting of Western civilization, this gal out in Mill City Media, and Van has got some information for us on her, but she had some of the best and I guess only footage you could get that wasn't sanctioned by the state or something. So
okay, this is Teresa Blair's profile pic, and that's all I'm going to put up because Teresa's gotten a whole lot more hell than she ever bargained for. Teresa's really a bright young lady. I mean, she's fantastic. She was at the Trump rally last fall. Remember when that turned into a riot outside the Target Center? When Trump had the audacity to do a Make America Great Again rally in Minneapolis. You remember, and that was one where the police defied their own mayor because the police wanted to show up in their uniforms, just like they did when Obama came to town. And Jacob Fry absolutely refused. He said, you'll get fired if you show up in uniform at this rally. Jacob Fry hates Trump, and I mean hatred. That's not too strong a word to describe his attitude towards Trump. You know, so so anyway, I want to put that in there, and then I want to just jump on over to her actual. If I can, okay, get out of there. You know, these drop-down menus are annoying. This is one of the photos she actually took on, what was this, Sunday, right? Yesterday? On the I-35 bridge. This is the trucker that was driving the tanker. This woman knows how to show up and be where the action's happening. And this is right at the point where the police officers go in and rescue this guy from getting beaten to death. So, but then I want to show you this, and this is, I'm just going to play about 2-minute clips so you'll get a sense of what Teresa's doing. This is actually Wednesday night, okay? What's his name? Mike Tobin with Fox News still couldn't get into Minneapolis, but this gal ran 3.5 hours. Now, this is 3 hours into it. This is in front of Precinct 3, my old precinct, just down Minnehaha from where I lived. When I was pastoring and teaching school in Minneapolis. So let's play. She had said there were about 150 cops by her estimation at this point.
She had some great footage the night of rolling through the carnage.
Yes, yes, that's the same footage. And again, folks, this. Okay, watch it.
Cool. Tell him there's some pictures. Cool. Are you okay? He's limping. Oh. We're gonna make it, bro. Where's he at? Are you all right? Yes. What happened? Let's go. Oh shit! Oh, they're spraying the crowd. They're spraying the crowd. I'm getting back. I gotta get back. They're spraying the crowd. Looks like mace. I don't know. Oh, they're shooting rubber bullets. They're shooting rubber bullets, guys. I gotta get back. Oh shit, rubber bullets, more rubber bullets. Damn, you can hear them. These guys, they tried to go behind the police fence. They got sprayed, they got shot with rubber bullets. All right.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. Now, later that overnight, she did get beat up because she came across some people trying to take apart an ATM machine and get away with the loot. And of course, she's filming, and that's a federal felony, isn't it? So anyway, that's just a little what Teresa's done. I reached out to her. I actually asked her if she wanted to be on tonight's show here. Her life is just so chaotic. I don't think she wants her face out there right now. But she's been very appreciative. I told her my wife and I are praying for her and stuff. So, you know, this is citizen journalism, folks. This is the people saying, hey, look, we're not in it for advertisers. We're in it for truth and justice.
And let's encourage all our listeners, become citizen journalists like us. It's now pretty easy.
Yes.
You know, every computer has a camera. You've got cameras on your phones. It's pretty easy to put them up on YouTube or Facebook, and we can all do this. We can show up as citizen journalists to press conferences and say, hey, I'm a citizen journalist. And get yourself in, and they truly should not be able to keep you out.
I want to give you this gal a plug. This is the Facebook page, Mill City Citizen Media.
There you go.
And the liquor store you see on fire is right across from Precinct 3 fire station. This was the next night. But please, everybody, please like this page, okay? Now, look at here. How many views? 2.7 million views of this video that we just saw a clip of. That's how much she's making an impact. That's unreal. That is unreal. So,
and
anyway, and she, by the way, she does have a Patreon. account set up. She could use some help. I mentioned she was beat up when she came across people at the ATM. She had a really nice phone, really nice, and they stole it from her. Okay. So now she's got some expenses, because in order to do this right, you need a good phone, you need a strong battery, you need everything working on all cylinders. Because she did 3.5 hours straight. My phone can't do that. So,
one of the things, back to the citizen media, I said last week, it's going to be citizen media against citizen tyrant, because that's what you're seeing. As Dr. Science Troll here, I go visit the live feeds, and that's what happened to me just this week. GT Bynum was on talking about the COVID. This is before everything melted down, and saying things I disagreed with, saying that the data shows that there's direct influence of social distancing, and it's just that's not a logical, scientific, accurate statement. Van, you said the other day, if I can't catch something from somebody in Ireland or whatever, there was if I say, hey, you stay away from my daughter and she won't get pregnant, that's not science, that's control. So I mean, it's a real simple deduction here.
It will be true, though.
It is true. Control will work. Yeah.
Well, at least she won't get pregnant by that guy.
Tom, I want to share something. I was once part of the media in Minnesota, and I want to show you this. I won this award 50 years ago. My first media job. It's called the Sales Master Award. I was 8 years old. I think I might have just turned 9. Okay. And anyway, it's because I delivered newspapers and sold subscriptions. Now, this one was for the newspaper called the Minneapolis Star. And they had a sister publication called the Minneapolis Tribune, which was the morning. I did the afternoon one. And then later, they combined them to the Star and Tribune. And that's what you see today is the Star Tribune. Now, I was a paper boy. That was the term, a paper boy. But just 4 years later, right here you see I got another award, because then I was delivering the Tribune in the morning. And they had paper girls and paper boys, and you could see the logo of a girl and a boy both delivering newspapers, because, hey, this was the 70s, right? This is the feminist era. And so anyway, I just wanted to give people a little sense of this is a little of Dave's history. You're in my museum tonight. And next week, it's going to all change. We'll never know what you see in Dave's museum on Monday nights.
Well, what I was saying about being Channel 6, the fascinating history you have, Dave. What we're finding out is that citizen journalists are more accurate and more honest and more transparent than your professional go-rounds. Channel 6 is supposed to be local and loving local people, and I'm as local as you get around here. And all I was doing was pointing out some of these things that are criticisms of what GT Bynum was saying about the COVID and the data-driven such information, and they scrubbed my comments from the troll section of the peanut gallery.
You hater.
Well, I'm just saying, if you can't even have a decent, transparent conversation with
you're destroying their ignorance, their facade of ignorance,
narrative,
and therefore that they are true, news reporters who are unbiased because they just want to know the truth. And when in reality, what they do is they play stupid like they should, and sometimes they just are, but they act like they don't know that there are other sides to these stories. And we're going to see in a minute how she just lies, gets the story.
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and set that one up. And I want to read, there's a guy, Mike Simmons or Simones on Twitter. He says, his headline says, and this, I guess he says, several people were injured when a truck drove through a group of protesters on I-244 eastbound during a George Floyd protest. I responded, this should read, several people were injured when a group of protesters stood in traffic on I-244 eastbound during a George Floyd protest.
Yeah. Okay, you want to see, because I think Oldham had a good point here. Let's run two different versions of this thing, and you can see what channel 2. This time we're picking on channel 2, Giselle Fuentes, and now I'm going to, she wraps up. I am starting about a minute into this, about a 2-minute piece, because she starts out by talking about other things, about the rallies and the events and stuff, but let's pick it up now, okay?
Okay.
And here we go. We're going to hit play, and then I think I'll go ahead and go to full screen.
Yeah, good.
For that Black Lives Matter rally. Now, cell phone video by one of the protesters captured the scary incident that happened around 6:30. You can see that red truck carrying a trailer behind barreling through that crowd. Witnesses say
Barreling.
they even saw a man jumping off the interstate to get away from the truck. 2 people had to be taken to the hospital, while a third victim says he's lucky he got away with minor injuries.
Now, thankfully, like, I only got my leg a little bit injured and my arms here, I mean, my hands here, but, like, I didn't get as bad as other people.
The Oklahoma Highway Patrol says protesters surrounded the truck right after the incident. He didn't stop, but out of fear, that driver tried to run away. Officials then later took him in for questioning. At this time, no charges have been filed and his name has not been released. We are waiting to get more details from the Oklahoma Highway Patrol. Of course, we'll
All right.
So I want to talk about the man. This Mike Simone or Simmons. His headline read, "This man," she mentioned him in the piece there, "this man fell off the overpass when the truck drove through a group of protesters." And I suggested that would be, "This man fell off the overpass when he was walking where traffic is known to occur." So it's like the way they write these stories. She says that the truck didn't stop. You'll see in other video, there's other video where clearly he did stop. And also, how can you surround a vehicle if it's barreling down the highway, which it was? And you can see when he realizes that he has to move because the crowd's going to burn him and his horses down, he kind of staccatos his acceleration because people are screaming as though there might be somebody under a wheel. And he knows he can't see everything, so he goes a little bit and stops, and goes a little bit and stops. And it looks to me as though he's literally trying not to just plow out of there. He's trying to give anybody who might be underneath a wheel to roll out of the way. I mean, he didn't just floor it.
I think wasn't the operative term by Giselle Fuentes is that he drove off. In this video, we're going to watch.
He ran off.
Or ran off, yeah. Now let's watch here and see how he just ran off.
Ran off in fear. It was she goes into so much stuff that nobody can know.
Well, he doesn't run off in fear. He runs to a point B called the police officers.
Yes. Let's take a look at this.
Now, that did start up a little bit after the other one, just to be fair.
It did. It did. This was all they had. Watch this. Now, why in the world the police are sitting down there instead of where the people actually need to be controlled? Who knows?
So his ramp has been pulled down, and he's stopping at the cops.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, that's the ramp to let horses out, and there's more to the story, which we have heard that the protesters were trying to actually get in at his horses that he had in the back end. And obviously, we can see evidence the fact that they had been messing with the back of his trailer because the ramp is down, and those things don't just come down on their own.
Well, horse lives matter, and PETA people have to protect and rescue the horses. Now, see, watch this. The cops just put his gate up for him so that he wouldn't have to get out of his vehicle. They literally wanted him out of there. This is the cops. And the cops caught up with him later. All right? Now, I did talk to somebody, a mutual friend of this driver, who told me that, he's already talked to the cops. They have not pressed any charges or anything on this. They saw the whole thing happen.
Right. We'll see how what happens with time, but the story from
We want
from
to
others.
check in now with Miles Kipper. I hope I'm pronouncing
Sorry, I
that right.
did not know I had that. Okay.
So the story the story is there's more to this story.
Yes.
And that is that there's another side. There's the driver's side to the story.
Sure.
What you saw in the first video that when he's barreling through was, and especially that little woman in the front with her back to the truck trying to hold it back like Tiananmen Square.
It's
it was where literally she will not get out of the way. It's not like she is an innocent party in this thing, and the fact that he has actually been attacked.
Yes.
Where his horses are starting to freak and they can really hurt themselves.
Okay, there is a traffic statute in state code that's called impeding the flow of traffic. And it applies to vehicles that are blocking lanes, going too slow, things like that. It can also apply to anybody who sets up a barricade on the road. And by the way, this is interstate. Last I checked, at least when I was getting my driver's license, no pedestrian traffic could be on an interstate.
Also on Channel 8, Tulsa's Channel 8, I've got another rewrite of a headline, but Burt Mumolo has some video from Channel 8 that I believe, if I rewatch it again, this is on Twitter, shows the truck stopped. I mean, literally stopped.
Yes. Yes.
Well, it was stopped beforehand. They started throwing things in the truck. So the alternate story goes, the horses started freaking out, and you can hear that in the truck up front because, it all transfers through the trailer hitch, and you can hear all this stuff. And so he's like, okay, we got to get out of here because they're going to harm my horses. They're going to maybe harm me. You saw people banging on his windows, trying to get into his own truck. And the last thing you want to be is Reginald Denny. If anybody is old enough to remember, Reginald Denny was pulled from his semi during the LA riots in 1994 or 92, excuse me, and pulled from his truck and beaten with bricks.
Yes.
To within an inch of his life. And that's the last person you want to be, or the last situation you want to be. It's time to get out of there. And you know what? These people who are causing the stoppage so that others can break in are guilty of the crimes of, complicit in the crimes of, whatever damage would come, physical or property.
So Burt Mumolo has this line here that I rewrote for him. His line reads like this: demonstrators hit by truck. 2 people were transported after a truck rolled through a crowd of protesters on I-244. OHP says they've been talking to the driver. Channel 8's Burt Mumolo spoke live with one of the people who was hurt, and I wrote it like this: violent rioters hit by a truck. 2 people were transported after a truck was forced to evacuate through a crowd of attacking protesters on I-244. OHP says they have been talking to the victim. Channel 8's Burt Mumolo spoke live with one of the people who was assaulted by agitators. It's pretty easy to write the news properly if you just look at it accurately.
Yeah. Now, this driver who's handling horses may actually have seen just hours earlier this incident where another driver ended up in the hospital because he happened to come across some people who were actually blocking I-35 in downtown Minneapolis here. I want to show this scene for you. This is just a very short clip. And here we go. Oops.
That truck approached, and even some of the brave people attempting to slow it down, and then look at
there he moves some more.
Tried to get close to stop him or stop the driver.
Now they're starting to get in this cab.
They're a sizable vehicle going there right in the middle of the interstate. Jeff, that came up.
He's going to start driving. You can't see it from this angle, but he was going very, very slow, trying to get through.
Like that, but going pretty fast into that crowd and then coming to a stop. But you're seeing kind of that mob of people then really gathering tightly together. Oh, here
he's going about 30 miles an hour right there.
And
if he had continued, it looks like somebody didn't get out of his way.
So they threw bicycles in the path of his truck.
Oh, is that what it was?
Somebody
Yes.
let down in front of him in the road.
Right.
It looked like that. I found out from another view, Channel 5 KSTP showed it from the other angle from a helicopter, and they saw that it was a bicycle. And actually, a few bicycles have been thrown.
There is looking like people clearly were upset that semi came down the interstate where they had been peacefully protesting. I mean, it's just
peacefully protesting.
Just go right there. A dangerous
Now,
situation that unfolded right there.
now,
Right before
I want to say here, I used to drive this on a regular basis, this 35W bridge. And what you can't see here is he just came under the Washington Bridge underpass, and it's an S curve. And so this is most of the way onto the curve here, and they're just about to go over the water. He did not see them, or could not have seen anybody we see in the screen could not have seen them within about till he got within about a third of a mile.
Okay, so here's the question, and in a semi going, that heavy, it takes a little bit to stop. But
yes,
the question is, did they not have blockage of the freeway back further so that people wouldn't have this happen to them?
Well,
or did this just pop up so quick that there was no chance to do that?
Exactly.
Well,
Nobody.
And then what was the final outcome? What happened to the driver? Do we know?
He is arrested after he was released from the hospital.
And this was the guy we saw without the shirt earlier in the early
right.
photo.
Yes, that was one of the pictures that our gal Teresa Blair was right there on the scene and took. I assume that was one of her pictures.
And so again, we have a whole lot more to the story than is initially reported.
Yeah.
And what I want to say here, just before we get too much further, is I am fully in support of blocking streets and things like that at times for protest. Because you have to do that at times. They're just, hey, if things are that egregious, you have to do that. But it has to be over something legitimate and has to be pretty egregious. To block a freeway, though, is to take your own life in your hands. And when you do this, you have to be careful and
someone else's.
Well, if you're taking someone else's life, then you're guilty of murder and your rights don't exist any longer.
Yeah, I'm saying for this trucker, if he has to swerve out of the way with that heavy a load, he could easily end up going over the side and falling to his death.
Or taking out other people and doing all sorts of things. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My thing is, you want to get a freeway shut down, it takes weeks to get your proper permits.
Oh, you won't get a permit to shut a freeway down. That's why they're doing it this way.
That's my point. Where do the rest of us go to get our permit for equal time for our marches?
Okay,
the same place they do.
How do you consider? How do you consider? And you're saying blocking the street is maintaining civil unrest.
Well, remember that when our citizenry and our government completely forsake the rule of law, as we have seen time and again, and especially through COVID and so forth, when they forsake that, there is a time that we need to push back. And what we are doing is not civil disobedience, because their rules are unjust and unlawful, but we need to push back. Now, I do not agree with shutting down an interstate. I do support shutting down city streets, like they did in Michigan out front of the Capitol. I fully support that.
If I could add to this, the proper permitting, first of all, it has public safety protocols very much through and through on it. When you're going to have a parade, You have to show a map plan, the whole parade, contingencies of what if there's emergency? Are we going to hem somebody in? We've got to make a way for everybody to have access to their property. You got to handle all those things. And then you got to have roadblocks and warnings and everything, all in the name of public safety. Okay.
Right.
In this, you don't have any of that. This would fail to get a permit on every count.
Well, my point is to try to draw a distinction. Look.
Yeah, and I was going there, Oldham. You're right. I got distracted. My point is, to shut down a neighborhood street, you don't have nearly the public safety concerns as barricading a railroad tracks or barricading an interstate. Tom, I want to go back here to Bynum because this has a tie-in. Where those people
we set us up real quick because we've gone long. 3D Politics Live every Monday at 7 p.m. right here live on Facebook. 3D Politics Live with Tommy McKay, your fantastic host, David Oldham from SoonerPolitics.org, and David Van with ConstitutionalGrounds.com. You can find a lot of information from both those sites, ConstitutionalGrounds.com and SoonerPolitics.org. Catch me at Tommy McKay on Facebook and Twitter. And so tie us into the GT Bynum because I've got some stuff I want to say about that also.
Yeah. Okay, now G.T. Bynum's office was very much involved in a Black Lives Matter rally that was over there on the north side of the downtown loop around, north side of downtown. And it was in a field there. I listened to the people organizing. My daughter and her husband went to it, okay? And there were 2 underpasses to get to Guthrie Green at each end of that block. So you could have taken surface streets instead of climbing up the rise and going over the I-44 interstate, or 244.
Right.
My point is, whatever police officer or mayor decided it was okay to shut down that interstate and then fail to do it is guilty of causing this harm. This is a failure of our government. I want to know, where do I go on a Sunday morning to get a permit for Sunday afternoon, especially after we saw what happened in Minneapolis. Right. This is a screw up. It has Bynum's name all over it because they could have easily taken at either end of the block of the field they're in and walked surface streets, straight line. And people were taking their children up there.
That's what's so sick about it.
Tom, I'm going to channel my inner Bynum right now. They ought to be ashamed of themselves.
Oh, yes. Yeah, shame on you. Shame on you. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm saying it, man. That is idiotic, I
mean, yeah, if you're going to, I've seen some of these videos where they're like, well, they tase the guy in front of his children. And I'm like, dude, when you have your children in the car is not the time to make a stand with the cops. I mean, it's a real simple thing. Oldham.
Well, I was going to say we don't know what's going to ultimately transpire, whether some of these protesters that go up on onto the interstate are going to eventually be charged or not.
Right.
Most likely not. But there are lessons here for those of us who are fighting for actually, for real causes. And we'll get to more on the Bynum story and some of the ridiculous, things that they have demanded in order to stop their protests and things like that. But the point is that we who are fighting for liberty need to do more than we have. And if you're going to go and beg the people who are committing the atrocities, who are committing the criminal acts in government for permission to protest them, then we are going to fail. And I think that's a lesson we can take from this, and we need to take from this.
there's a lot of people that I have are connected with on Facebook and such that are GT fans, and of course they just couldn't understand why all this time I would oppose all this collectivism and such. And then today, when GT met with the hashtag We Can't Breathe Black activists, or whatever they're called, the Black Lives Matter, whatever the group is, there's a 30-some-odd minute meeting that I posted to the 3D Politics Facebook page of Mayor Bynum and the police chief with the grievances. It's what Van talks about all the time, proper grievances. And
did you notice that they were not socially distanced or wearing masks?
Well, let's just say they were quasi distances by about 3 feet. So my point is that I watched the entire meeting, and I got hats off to Cassia Hall. You can really see their training coming through in our mayor. He was able to listen to all sides, and in about 30 minutes, instead of making this meeting go on and on and on with no conclusion, he was able to say, look, here is a statement that I have written down that I think it's a consensus statement that he thought he could get behind. And he read it. And it was brilliant, because what he did was he took everything they were worried about and fixed what he could at the moment while still preserving of what he wanted to preserve. He was struggling for transparency is what he wanted. He doesn't want to shut down live PD because it creates a transparency. It lets us see. But the hashtag We Can't Breathe people actually brought up a good point. That these people sign waivers. It's an advertiser driven market. These victims of these crimes, sometimes they're not found guilty later. They sign waivers under duress for their footage, and this is exploitation. I think that's actually a pretty good point. So what I thought GT made an excellent statement. He says we're going to end the perceived exploitation through the live PD, but maintain the transparency of the Tulsa police through a YouTube nonprofit, which I got problems with nonprofit. That's a whole nother thing, but basically not a profit oriented business. So where
Tom, is this what you're saying?
Yeah, I shared that. Yeah.
Okay, so folks, you can go to 3D Politics on Facebook and pull up that video. That's this afternoon. I just want to be sure.
It's 30 minutes long, and this could have easily gone on and on and on and on and on with all the platitudes and all the discussions. But at one point, you can see GT, and I noticed this about him when I debated him. All of a sudden, he kicks in and starts writing stuff down because he's solidified something. And,
yes.
And he started writing down his mission statement. And when I congratulated him on it, everybody I knew switched around and said, I hate him now. I mean, now I'm like, everybody's like, whoa. So I'm like literally proud of our mayor. I thought he did an excellent job. He showed some of that debate training that happens at Cassia Hall, where he summed up what was the pertinent rubber meets the road stuff. He met Regina Goodwin, who is just an unpleasant person to sit and talk to, and yet she has her sharp edge for her reasons. And he took her issues, and I think she made some fairly valid points. But I thought our mayor did a fantastic job today. I was surprised and amazed and glad to give him a pat on the back for such a great. I think he did a much better job than I could have.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, David.
No, I was going to say, but he's back to wanting more unconstitutional stuff to deflect from him and his responsibility as mayor. So for the viewers, one of the things that he wanted, one was, well, let's go ahead and end the live PD. And frankly, live PD, everybody knows that on live PD night when they're out, used to be Friday night. Now it's almost every night. But it used to be Friday nights because they had the cameras out. The cops acted differently.
Yes.
With the cameras, and so that was a problem to the community. They were actually the cops were actually a menace to the community, and so that is legitimate.
Same thing with the protesters. The cameras come out, they act differently, and they're a menace.
Oh yes, oh yes, and you'll notice that they only come out, you know, at live what's it called? Press time or whatever, you know, when they can go live.
Yeah.
And it doesn't so much matter the other times. The other thing is, though, that one of the things that he found consensus with was to restart the push for the police commission. Now, I would not mind with that.
The review board, the
review board, yes.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is that I would not have a problem with that, except that he is responsible for maintaining the constitutionality of the police force.
Exactly.
And all he wants to do is deflect, just as he has done with COVID. He's pointed to the governor. The governor points to the CDC. Everybody's pointing somewhere else. The CDC points to the science and to the scientists. Nobody is taking responsibility for their responsibility. Hey, if an unconstitutional act happens, just like in Minneapolis, a cop murders a man.
Yes.
It is time to deal with it right then and there. The cop needs to be dealt with and brought to justice. GT is unwilling to do so, so he wants to put in another review board, another layer that he can then say, look, it's not about what I want to do.
Yeah.
There's other people, and that way he will never be actually held accountable.
And that's that flexing on his point is much like Trump, and that's nothing but a populist move. He wouldn't do it except for there's pressure from the populace, and that's okay.
Listen, Jacob Fry, mayor of Minneapolis, who I do not think highly of at all, took the lead and fired this cop within hours, less than 24 hours. This guy was fired, and now he's in jail. He's charged. He's on suicide watch.
So
how do you do that with the review board as part of the official process?
So if you're talking, well, somebody wanted to answer that because you just lit me up on the white privilege comment of the concept. Because when you start talking about white privilege and who's going to be held accountable, how can we hold this white cop accountable? How can we forget the race for a second?
Yeah.
How can we hold a low-level cop accountable when you can't hold Hillary Clinton accountable for high-level crimes? Yeah. The white privilege happens at the top, not at the low-level cop.
Yeah.
The reason people are ticked off because we're not enforcing the law against the high-level criminals. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and it crosses over the race card with Eric Holder. When is he ever going to pay the price?
Well,
does anybody remember Vince Foster? Who paid the price for that? That is the white privilege that everybody's ticked off about, and they're letting the rioters are taking it out on the proletariat.
Yep.
Right. Well, there's a plan, there's a reason for that, and that goes beyond any claim of injustice. Remember that this was a planned event looking for a trigger. Okay? These things are planned. Remember that the agitators are Antifa, not necessarily the Black Lives Matter folks. There have been legitimate, peaceful protests, and then the illegitimate stuff comes from others who have come in and pre-planned this stuff, because this stuff is everywhere around the country, and it's not like they've just sprung up on at the spur of the moment.
The whole concept of a legitimate protest being overtaken by some nefarious force is called history. It happens over and over through history. A good friend of mine at U of A up there in Arkansas during the Vietnam War, he was very vocal, a loud fella, very talkative, very politically oriented, set up a big protest. And on the day of their giant effective protest, all of a sudden they came in, hey, we got these national national guys from SDS, the students from the Democratic Society, and And we went, yeah, we got some big speakers. And then for the first couple of minutes, he's like, oh, cool, because they're getting some real traction. Then all of a sudden, the national boys came in. His whole event was taken over University of Arkansas, and he was you ever saw Animal Farm when the dean tells the boys, and I'm reporting you to your draft board sergeant? That is exactly what happened to my buddy the next day. He was drafted. He was gone to the war. And so this is what happens historically is they override these legitimate gatherings. And this is exactly what they've been doing. They set up pallets of bricks in Dallas ahead of time. They set up pallets of bricks in Seattle ahead of time. And the boys walk
Fayetteville,
in.
North Carolina.
They pressured us down. This is a bigger plan than you might even think necessarily. They pressured us down for 90 days and then lit the fuse. And I mean, it is dangerous knowing that they have professional agitators out there. And what they want to do is get Trump to call martial law, which is what he's doing. And so they can say, you caused martial law. I mean, it's like it's a provocateur. That's all.
Tom, I want to say it's 12 minutes after 8 right now. If you're watching us from Minneapolis tonight, I hope you're at home. I hope you're in a safe place or out in your backyard or even on your front porch. I think should be fine. And so anyway.
Just beware. You might want to go inside while they march by, but it looked like somebody was going to pop his head right back out the door.
Guess who's exempted from the curfew? The homeless.
I just think we need to.
Where would they go?
We should sell a picnic Kevlar for backyard picnic.
Yeah.
Timing was on.
Yeah. Well, and we had a just here in Oklahoma, we had a fellow blogger, citizen blogger who was beaten up.
That's right.
Just because he had a MAGA hat on. He was actually there in support of the protest, in support of protesting against the killing of George Floyd, and was down there and was talking to people about all of that. And some kid came up and grabbed his hat. He went back to get it and got jumped by about 5 or 6 guys and got beaten up, and was later posted a video of himself with a black and blue eye, almost swollen shut, and his face all bloodied up. So, and all over because he wore the wrong attire.
This is my definition of bigotry and racist is that it is a forced group association that prioritized above the individual personhood. So they didn't care who he was or what he was saying. They saw the hat and they forced his association with everything they want to say is bad, which is the same way that George Floyd is losing his personhood the public loves his skin color more than they love his personhood. So we're losing the identity of the human. It's no longer a human. Now we're into the legend of the group. We're no longer talking about an individual. We're talking about the group. And so the real problem here is the collective. Collectivism. You call it what you want. Socialism, communism, fascism, whatever you want to call it, when it is the application of a forced group association that rises above in priority the individual personhood. You are no longer a person. You are associated with a group. It's amazing. There are some of us like, who is it? Rachel Dolezal. Her personhood was able to transcend her group. She was able to somehow cross over the group.
Oklahoma City.
Actually, I'm wrong about that. My condition still stands. Her group association overrode the reality of her demographic. They were able to say, look, here's how strong the group association is. We claim you are now forced into the black group. We will force associate you. It's the use of force is what it is. Van, what do you think about it? Am I rambling?
I was trying to do a little bit of homework on what Oldham had to say. You guys want to watch Moto's see his nice little shiner and what he had
You
to
can at
say
least
about.
you can put up a picture
See the
about it.
picture. We got some more stuff to talk about.
Okay, let me just show you guys a real quick screen of it. We aren't going to play it, but this is Moto with the peaceful bunch down there, the peace-loving people who want to talk civil rights, and they were obviously not too concerned about his civil rights. He's wearing a hat that says "Make America Great Again." How offensive can you be? Well,
and that was his crime.
If you stand in the highway, don't think you might not get hit by a truck, but you can't just go around wearing a hat.
Yeah. So I talked to his legal counsel last night, and because I'm trying to figure out, why don't you go to the media with this? I don't know why he's handling things the way he is, but what happened was they stole his hat. He went to go get it. And that's when he was surrounded and ganged up on and beaten. And finally, he pulls his gun out. And then he faced a police investigation for him brandishing a gun.
Right.
And no charges on anyone yet.
So the white privilege didn't work for him in the same way that the white privilege didn't work for the GOP rally at Veterans Park last year when we had license and we had everything ready to roll legally with the city, and the Tulsa cops stood down.
Yes.
Remember, in order for white privilege to work, you have to be part of the bureaucratic and political swamp. If you're not part of that, then you don't or be well-moneyed. Otherwise, you don't get the privilege.
Here's the warning I have, and this I'm dead serious about. If you, as a constitutionalist, liberty-loving, want everybody to have all their civil rights respected and honored, you happen to vote for Republicans, you happen to stand with the GOP, like this young man, and you go down there, if your politics are not within the spectrum and we don't know where that spectrum is, you are not only not welcome there, you may end up having your property stolen, and you try to assert your civil rights, you may end up like this guy or worse.
Right.
So I'm just saying that you may really care about George Floyd, you may care about Black Lives Matters, but the makeup of the people, and this wasn't Minneapolis, this wasn't Philadelphia, wasn't DC, wasn't Atlanta, this was in Oklahoma.
Bring us back to full screen, Van.
Pardon me?
Bring us back to full screen. It's enough.
Well, I'm making my point. I wanted people to actually see that face. Because
and you did. And the thing is, they are, and Miles, what I was trying to say earlier, there is an egregious white privilege where Hillary Clinton is involved. It's huge. You look at a guy like Brian Epstein, and he goes around and everybody knows it, and they say, okay, white privilege.
You mean Jeffrey Epstein?
Yeah, they knock Moto out, and they're thinking about this white privilege like Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and they're so confused and useful as a ignorance that they don't know they're supporting the same people that are literally doing it to them. There's Candace Owens is beautifully showing people the reality and some of her statistics that she posts. I think go ahead, Van.
Two things. Yesterday, I found out my daughter was going down to the event at the OSU Tulsa campus on the north side of downtown.
Okay.
Maybe I should go down there. And I listened to a video from the rally organizer, and she's, I don't know, chewing out somebody off screen while she's trying to do this, and I find out it's her husband. It's a black woman, and she's just kind of, and finally she turns to me and says, "This is my husband. He happens to be white." And he said, he's white. He's one of the good ones. That's a racist statement.
Mm-hmm.
Period. I mean, you guys have heard me talk about how much I'm proud of my son-in-law, a young black man who I just think has the highest integrity of just about anybody I know his age. And I would never introduce him and say he's one of the good ones.
Well, right.
That's basically a racist statement, no matter what color your skin is.
Exactly.
Well, let's also say let's take it back. It's an un-American statement because aren't we supposed to think the best of everybody until they prove themselves otherwise? That's the point. That's what's missing, whether it be COVID, drugs, guns, curfews, and all of that, is we assume the worst.
Okay.
Everybody's a criminal. Everybody's infecting you. Everybody's doing evil, and so we need to bring them into compliance.
Right.
Then we'll see about whether or not.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, look, and I know, she screwed up. Maybe she'll clean that up. But I wasn't going to take any chances. This is organized by somebody who will just, matter of factly, treat her husband horribly, first of all, and then, refer to him as one of the good whites, and so I go, no. Well, then I see what happens to Moto, and I'm like, double no, and hell no.
Well, and the thing is, there are ways to go about it where you can hide yourself and not bring stuff like that on you, but we shouldn't have to. I mean, I shouldn't have to leave my Make America Constitutional Again hat at home because it looks too much like the other.
Yeah, but it was I'm sorry, go ahead.
But my point is we should remember, as Americans, we have the right to express ourselves any way we want, so long as we are doing it peacefully.
Right.
And we should all be able to get along on that basis, even though we vehemently disagree with the points.
Yeah, my point, 11 or maybe it was 10 months ago, down in Lawton, a couple of our friends, Tim Harper, Adrian Oathap, were the only two acknowledged conservatives down there at this, the Dreamers, that they were going to be using Fort Sill as a detention center, right? And that Tim Harper, among several hundred of these leftists, he's flying a Trump flag and he doesn't get touched.
Right. Well, they were afraid of his gun.
Sure.
But you're right. There was a different. There were people though that expressed that they wanted to touch him, but they were afraid to.
Oh yes, yes.
So it was in their hearts to do it. My point is, we shouldn't have to hide this. We should remember that if we're all living as proper Americans, as patriots, then we treat our neighbors with the respect due them just by their being an American, a fellow member of society, and there should be a proper respect and treatment due each and every single one of us. Doesn't matter the color of your skin, your creed, or anything else. It should be that should be the way we treat people.
Okay.
Even though we disagree politically.
Okay, I've been a civil rights activist on the issue of our humane treatment of mentally ill. All right. Mm-hmm. Most of the people that I've allied with are on the far left. And I wrote a pretty nice thesis to them where I said, look, for too long, the people on the left have been carrying the load by themselves. And this is a civil rights issue. And we should all be banding together, regardless of our other political differences. And I think this is no different. But there are people there who are intolerant.
Of course.
And that's what I'm saying.
I'm shaming those people.
The intolerance.
He's talking about, man.
Yes, the intolerance, even in their leadership, the outright bigoted statements in their leadership, the prejudice statements, I don't have confidence in them.
So, guy on the Facebook, and let me just reset once again. Yeah. We're going with more information, of course, always each show. 3D Politics Live, Tommy McKay right here, your fine host, David Van, David Oldham, talking about all things political, how the world affects us right here in Oklahoma. And the point I want to make about the society today is that we are living in the failure of another socialist system called the government public school system. It is 50 years since LBGTJ's LBJ's Great Society is a failure. Here's the proof of it. If we had all this strife, you wouldn't have the amazing communication breakdown we have with a poor society that doesn't know anything, how to behave, how to share. We got blacks who can't get along with whites, and we have women who can't get along with men, and everybody's gay that can't get along. And so the problem here is that we have given the Great Society the reins of the children for 50 years, and we're reaping the benefit of it. Everybody on both sides has seen it all fall apart, melt down, and people say, well, there's bad parenting because racism's taught at home. And who trains the children to be parents, and who trains the parents? The public schools trains. We've had 4 generations or 5 generations of nothing but public school trained parents, and these are them. They're wearing masks and breaking windows and going insane. And even the people on our side are like, well, I don't know, maybe it's okay if, I don't know, what's constitutional again? I mean, even our side didn't know what's going on. You know, it's just absolutely ridiculous. So I'm in a Facebook discussion, very polite, not even a spat, hashtag can't breathe, and they have these 4 demands for the mayor. And one of them is we want reparations for names of certain black people, and then the word countless other black people. Now, that's where I got snagged. I said, look, if you want your demands to be met, make them, you know, not impossible. Yeah. The word countless is literally equals incalculable, which means the mayor can't, you would lie if you said, I'll meet a demand that's countless. It's literally, you can't meet a demand that's countless. So I said,
because we're countless.
So he tells me, I'm almost done. He tells me that I'm only looking for semantics and syntax issues, not justice. And I'm explaining to him, justice is a balance between 2 opposing views. And if you cannot define reasonably your definition of justice, then there is no justice.
Tom, he's not data driven, is he?
No, he's not, because what my point was trying to be was these people are not looking for agreement, because I kept asking him, all I'm looking for you to is to agree that that metric can't be met. And if you'll just rewrite it, take that one word out, then you got a demand, you know? Yeah. But he says, oh no, I can't even agree with that because really, and then he posted 16 links I'm supposed to go read. I'm like, dude, I'm not arguing ideology. I'm arguing logic. He said, well, there's violence. Silence is violence. No, destroying the language. There's a passive verb and an active verb, and you don't get to have it both ways. Well, the way I feel about it, well, nobody cares how you feel about it.
You know what? Chuck Strom taught me something about how to debate over financing of government functions with a liberal. You ask them, how much is enough? They can't answer it.
Oh, yeah. Because they don't want to say there's a lid.
Exactly.
Well, and the real issue is it isn't about how much is enough. The question is, how do they have the right in the first place to take anybody else's stuff?
Well, the question is, what's in your
That's the question, because this goes down to, you know, the first dollar is the crime. It's not about, you know, are we going to continue the theft?
Yeah.
So, and I do want to get in before we go any further down rabbit trails. I do want to talk about that Supreme Court ruling, because that was
this is
bogus.
On constitutionalgrounds.com, correct?
Yes. It's on Facebook. It's on Facebook.
This is basically a classic battle of church versus state or court, and it is pertinent to today's world. This is our right to freedom of religion. What does it say, Oldham?
Well, the issue here is the churches were told that they couldn't meet. They were shut down because, you know, social distancing and you can't meet because, you know, you're going to spread the disease. So they made these orders. Well, church near San Diego, Chula Vista, filed suit, and it got quickly to the Supreme Court. Some churches in Illinois filed similarly, as a legal maneuver, both states changed the conditions so that they tried to make the lawsuits moot. In the California one, though, Judge Roberts came out and made some wild statements in defense. He joined with the leftists on the court, and they're the ones who see the Constitution as a living document, in quotes, meaning that they can reinterpret it anytime they want. They meaning the Supreme
Whoever's
Court.
got the power base, right?
Yeah.
And rather than it being what it really is, a living document in that we can apply it to any situation, even those that weren't foreseen by the founders, like locomotion or computers. The principles within the Constitution still apply. That's how it lives, is you just reapply it. But they want to say it this other way. Well, Roberts joined them. He wrote a short opinion, but the operative word in his opinion, you can find this at Constitutional Grounds, is that he cites, and he cites the science wrongly, but he goes on and says the California order at the heart of this case, he observed, temporarily restricts the number of people who can gather in public to address this extraordinary health emergency. And in that, he was saying that let's see, where was it? Anyway, that it was that it's reasonable. And he harkens back to the ideas from 1905 that forced vaccinations or mandatory vaccinations for smallpox were reasonable, and that's his entire justification. He does not cite the Constitution; he cites science instead of the Constitution, and he uses that as the basis for violating the First Amendment and, frankly, all of the rest of the Bill of Rights.
How would you ask any atheist what's a reasonable exercise of a religion? They'll say zero.
Well, that's true. Well, and Kavanaugh, to his credit, and I have disliked much of what Kavanaugh has done since he got on the court, and I've been vocal on that. But Kavanaugh wrote a dissenting opinion. This is all, by the way, done on social media. None of it is yet official.
Oh.
But this has all just been put out. As far as I know, it's not official. But the three justices who did not consent, or the four justices, Kavanaugh wrote a dissenting opinion joined by the other three, and his dissent was it is unjust, and it demonstrates the unjustness of the majority of the court, because they're not shutting down businesses that substantially do the same thing, like department stores, like Walmart's and Target and things like that.
Could I ask some simple questions, Oldham,
Sure.
just get a real brief answer so I can move real quick? Did they mention the peyote case decision back in, I think it was early 90s?
I haven't read the decisions yet,
Okay.
so I don't know.
Okay, and I'll just say for people to understand, that is the right of indigenous people's religion to smoke peyote as part of their religious service.
Or utilize it, right.
Yes, and in that case, and here's what the operative point, because it was somewhat precedent setting, that the question, and Scalia actually sided with the statist when he said the state does have a compelling public health interest, and that's good enough to take away somebody's religious practices if you have a compelling public interest. But they did say, and this is 14th Amendment kind of stuff, that the government then must use the least obstructive means of accomplishing their public safety, public health.
Okay, so just and you are absolutely correct that actually went down just as you said.
Yeah.
The problem is No. I mean, that part is true.
I'm complimenting my constitutional knowledge. What do you kid?
No. I'm complimenting your recitation of the facts.
Yeah.
The problem is
Still stuck where you were before.
I'll take it.
No, the problem is that this compelling government interest and the least invasive means are not whatsoever constitutional.
Thank you.
In no way are those standards constitutional. They are fictions of the Supreme Court.
What they're saying is it sets up the government to say all of your constitutional rights are just luxuries that the government may at any time they deem an emergency may take them away at their whim.
Correct. And that's exactly how they look at things. They say, oh, that's not a right. Remember, rightful liberty is unobstructed action according to our will. Anything our hearts and minds could possibly ever dream up, we get to do without obstruction of government.
Okay.
Which means they can't say beforehand you can't do it. They can't.
So that is almost the definition of innovation, which defines our country.
Yeah.
Right.
It makes America great.
Yeah.
And the problem with this is they cite science or whatever science we happen to believe right now in our groupthink as being precedent setting over everybody's rights. The problem with that is many times our science gets turned on its head.
Well, as we're seeing with this,
it always gets turned on its head. Even with the COVID data, it was
right.
That's exactly it. Back in the 70s, if you had heart issues, you weren't supposed to eat any eggs, and you couldn't have butter. You had to have margarine. Then they found out margarine was actually worse than butter.
And now they're selling margarine as what's the new name that they have for? Oh, vegetable butter. Yeah, because they're pushing the vegetable side of it, or vegan butter.
And I'm just saying, I'll take my thousands-year-old faith and live by that before your current science of the last month that might change next month.
Well,
some of it does.
Exactly. Do you remember the Iceman when they found the Iceman?
Yeah.
Okay, then they found his little fire patch, and I used to use him as an example of how God's word maintains forever, and then science just continually changes their story. So without even blinking an eye, they found the Iceman. They're like, oh, guess what? Man had fire 4,500 years before he thought he did. Anyway. Wow, you were off by 4,500 years.
Okay,
4,000 years. You're like, no big deal.
I think this is a great segue into a topic you brought up last week. You being a devout Roman Catholic and your first time back at Mass.
Roman Catholic.
Pardon me?
I said, well, Roman Catholic.
Yeah, I was going to say, the devout is maybe going a
who said devout, but that's a nice
Well, you went to Mass, which is more than I can say for a lot of Catholics.
Yeah, that's correct.
But you know, the traditions, and I growing up Catholic, I know how much this means to people to anoint themselves with holy water when they go into the sanctuary.
I like the ritualistic nature of that's. I like participating in my religion. I don't like
Sure.
to just, yeah, okay.
Okay. And so I called my mother, devout Roman Catholic, you know, and so anyway, and I talked to her, and she said up there, all the bishops had to get approval from the governor for how they were going to conduct their rites and services, and everything had to be signed off by the governor. And I just said, Mom,
give him a lighter.
Do you not remember all the things that Dietrich Bonhoeffer had to deal with? And I said,
Bonhoeffer was a friend of yours.
You're going down the same trap of getting the governor to approve how you function, which rights. No, you know, I came up, you and I talked about it. I said, there is a way to make everybody happy if we would think of some innovation, because I've gone to my own father's Catholic funeral. They take out the shaker of holy water and they anoint the casket to bury the dead. And I said, you can easily do that because yesterday was Pentecost Sunday, and it could be a symbolic you know, of the Holy Spirit descending down upon the believers. And my mom thought it was brilliant. I said, well, did you tell your priest? Well, no, I didn't. I'm like, Mom!
I say if you're going to ask the governor and he gives the word, then the governor has to wear a mitre.
Yeah.
He looked
You know, yeah. So, Oldham, you know, this is kind of an important thing because what we see happening in Minnesota is we got Archbishop Governor Walz. That's really what
Correct.
we got.
Well, and that's the problem. That's the problem. Although the Supreme Court, I know, is going to end up being very technical on in their ruling, but that's the problem. Is they have literally said that the government can shut down churches anytime they want. They're giving them the green light to shut down churches so long as there's a compelling government interest. And that could, you know, obviously it can be made up, or I mean, or not, depending upon your view, whether this is legit, scamdemic, or plandemic, or whatever. But the point is that even though churches may dispute or disagree with the way that this is done, and don't think that this ends with the churches. Remember, you bring up Bonhoeffer from World War II. Remember, Moeller after World War II said, look, remember that they came first for the gypsies, they came for the socialists, they came for the Jews, then they came for us, but there was no one left to fight.
Yeah.
And the same thing is here. If they can get away with going after the churches, don't think they can't get away with going after your business, with your person, because remember, they're attacking our persons. I just posted another article that came out about the New York Bar Association voting to support forced COVID vaccination.
Yes.
This is the Bar Association. Who are you going to turn to for defense?
So, here's what is the most ominous about this ruling, as we understand it, is they are saying that science now is going to trump our religious liberties.
Correct.
That's the same science. Where does the science find its home? It's in academia. It's in our universities, right? Where is the largest home of the atheists? Those same universities.
Right.
We're literally letting the atheists run the churches.
Well, they're also, my point last week about the host and the holy water, and to give the devil his due, I was saying, I want my placebo. See, the fact is the placebo, the idea of the placebo, which is proven by science, placebo effect is a scientific reality, and it resolved and resides in the belief of the individual, which is the same place that religion resides. So they are literally wanting to control what we think and what we believe and do not believe. And I'm saying, unfortunately, and I know that the priests put out their spiritual neck onto the chopping block, and we battle principalities that are not smoking cigars in earthly rooms. When you become a priest, you literally dare the devil to come after you. And so these guys, and I don't care whether you believe the devil or not, that's a huge psychological burden. It's like running for office. You put yourself out there. And so these guys, I got to say, if you don't go pour the water, you're asking God to fix it for you. I mean, believe in God or don't believe in the God, pour the water.
We're at the point, or not far from it, where when the priest holds up the Eucharist and says the body of Christ, we may be getting hit with lawsuits for false advertising if you can't prove it's the body of Christ. That's the problem.
Prove it's a placebo effect, and I don't want it.
Because we're data-driven here, folks. Science-driven, right?
Yeah.
That's always possible.
If we look at that plant, that car plant, they can start calling it the Tesla race riot. Oh, look out.
Hey, I want to put a teaser in for next week,
Yeah.
if I could. Wrote an article. It's up there. I want everybody to review it, and let's have a discussion of it.
Okay.
As I mentioned, I used to live in Minneapolis. Minneapolis has been controlled by the Democrats for a century. And yet we've got the worst racial conditions there.
Right.
And you're going to find the same narrative over and over again. Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore, D.C., all of these places where I think the narrative, and we should discuss it next week, is I don't think the Democrats necessarily want to fix the racial problem because they lose the issue to run for office on.
That's right.
You know,
it's like the guy that didn't want to remove the objectionable word. I'm like, just take the one objectionable word. Oh no, because they want the objection.
Well, it's not just the objection. Remember, they actually believe that they're owed for everyone. They are owed for everyone they believe has been hurt, and that's everyone.
The race baiting poverty pimps will say that because
and I mean I'm talking down to the lowest levels. So because it has been put out there so much, they actually buy into it. Yeah, and they have bought into it hook, line, and sinker. It is part and parcel. It is like religion. So you'll never get them to take out the.
Here's the cool thing. In Oklahoma, I get to be a spectator. Oldham, you get to be a spectator. You know why? Because the only time we had slavery in Oklahoma was when there were only Indian tribes here, and they were the only ones that owned slaves. So it's going to be Tom paying the reparation. Cherokee Tom.
You white guys gang up on me.
Should be, but they've got an out to get us in there too, even though we're newer to Oklahoma.
No, I mean, that's literally, it's going to be the black folk against the tribes.
But yeah, that's true.
It should be.
Well, they already that's actually true with the Freedmen thing. They wrestled the Freedmen thing. That was part of their issues with the Freedmans. But, you know, the Oldham you're talking about, and David Van, you're talking about the race baiting when they do, you were hearkening back to the idea of them when you say reparations now for black people, that is a forced group association. They're saying all black people were injured and all black people need to be paid back. And you guys, because you're white, right? You're associated by force. Now, we're not going to look case by case to see if you really owe anything directly or if your family members. We're not going to go case by case. We're just going to go force group association. We take a look at you. We shove you in a group. Now, they have no idea I carry a Cherokee card. They'll shove me in the white group. I sound like a white guy. Talk like a white guy.
So, but anyway, back to this thing. And
I think we need to wrap this up.
Yeah.
We're going long.
I will. It's this cousin of mine who was a congressional staffer. He's actually in Hanoi, Vietnam right now. I told a narrative about this because this is true of the Republicans too. That Republicans will not fix some things because they will lose the issue. And many of us believe that abortion is something that's deliberately not being fixed because Republicans need the issue to raise money on.
Jason Murphy wrote an excellent article several years ago about that very thing. And he said these things won't end. I talk all the time about how the Republicans in South Dakota defeated the ending of vaccine mandates there just because they want to keep tyranny the appearance that they can dictate to us about our bodies.
Yeah.
And so it's not going to go away because all parties in government are invested in that.
Yes.
Yeah, in fact, the Republican National Platform allows for abortion up to 22 weeks. But when you
the Republican one does?
Read the 66 pages up to, I think it's either 20 or 22 weeks.
Wow.
National platform. And so when you that's the same reaction I got from the libertarians and another liberal friend of mine. They're like, what? Because this is your point. The Republicans don't want to come right out and say, yeah, we're good with it for 20 weeks. because they don't want to lose that ground. And also in the Republican National Platform is a plan, and it endorses moving the national parks back to ownership by the states. Who knew that? And why aren't they bragging about that? Because they want it in their platform for their base, but they don't want to really do that. They don't talk about that.
So, next week we're going to cover the news, the events that happened, but I think we need to, hopefully next week we'll have time to do it, is talk about how these issues never get fixed because there are people in office that don't really want them fixed.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Yep. Very good, gentlemen. Once again, another exciting episode of 3D Politics Live with Tommy McKay, your fine host, David Van from Soonerpolitics.org, and David Oldham right over there at constitutionalgrounds.com. We will see you all next week at 7 p.m. on Facebook Live.